episode of Hack a Week. It's part 3 of the 85 Honda VF 700S Sabre Cafe conversion. I have the carburetors off, just like I mentioned in the last video. It was time to get those carbs off and see what's going on with them. So here they are, all 4 carburetors pulled out as a single unit with the air box on top. Boy, that was not an easy task, I'll tell you. They were on there for a while. And I did notice over on that cylinder right there, there's a little bit of rust and stuff down in the intake, but it's not anything real bad, I don't think. I think it'll clean out okay, nothing real critical, didn't hurt anything mechanical. And as you saw before, I did fire it up and it ran a little bit. So I'll get the carbs straightened out, and we're going to take those apart in this episode, and we're also going to talk about the new, improved tank design that I've got going on here. I got inspired by the Ducati 900S. I kind of like the tank on that because it's got a frame similar to this, where it's a double top tube. Kind of comes down like this, but it certainly doesn't share any similarities engine-wise. That Ducati's a badass machine. So we'll be doing some work with the tank, laminating up some blue foam this time around. Blue foam is also soluble with acetone, which is what I want. I'll explain that a little more later. But for right now, let's tear into these carburetors and see just what kind of muck I have to clean out of them. Might not be fun. Well, let's get started here. See if we can get a couple of these float bowls broke loose. They haven't been off in forever, I'm sure, so some of these screws may be a little tight and rusty. But let's get one float bowl cover off so we can get in there and look around and see by example just how bad things are in there. I'm thinking I'm probably going to have to do the needle and seat valve at the very minimum in these carburetors and clean out all the yuck that's going to be in the bottom of them. Clean out the idle jets. The main jet's going to have to be cleaned. The needle valve for the main jet, that's going to have to be cleaned off. Oh yeah, that's pretty. Look at that. There's just a little bit of yuck and crud down in there. That's water. This thing sat outside, sat out in the rain, which is not the best thing for any vehicle. The rubber gasket is still good on there. It's still pliable. Right there's the reason it wouldn't run when I tried to start it. You can see there's a whole bunch of stuff getting clogged up there on the jets. The one right there in the middle, that one, that's the main jet. That's totally clogged up. And then there's a pilot jet over there. The floats are moving okay, so I guess that's kind of good news. They're not seized up. But these are going to need a lot of work. Maybe some parts, maybe not. We'll see. I'm just going to take them all apart, clean everything up, and make a determination from there as to whether or not they'll need needle and seat valves. I can test that, kind of like do a bench test, put it all back together, put a little bit of gas down in here and see if they overflow or not just on the bench. So anyway, let's continue right along and take off the rest of these covers. Oh, that one's tight. Well, I managed to get that really tight one out of there. By the way, just a little trick on that. Sometimes when you have a screw or a bolt that doesn't want to come loose, try tightening it a little bit first. That pulls the threads. Then try loosening it. So anyway, this one, this is pretty. Look, there's yogurt. It's carburetor yogurt. My goodness, these things are really gross. Okay, moving right along. Okay, last one. Wow. You know, I don't think I've ever seen such gross crap in a carburetor ever in my life. Evidently these two were exposed to a lot of water. This is like slime mold growing in here. It's cheese. Cheese in the carburetors. Okay, well, the best thing to rinse that out with is just going to be some warm water. So that's going to be the first step, is clean these off starting with water and then go for the solvent stuff later, because everything that's in here is kind of water-based grossness right now, so carburetor cleaner's, you know, going to be a waste of time and money until later. So I'll start out with some water, take them all apart, clean them up. Yuck! Alright, the carburetors got completely disassembled of all of their parts and went through a rigorous cleaning, and they came out pretty good. This is that one that looked horrible when I started, and it suffered quite a bit of corrosion and stuff going on in there. You can see some pitting in the metal right there. I get in close. It's not really going to hurt anything, I hope, but I don't think it's really going to have anything to do with the jetting and all that, because most of the inserts inside here where things go are made of brass. But that's probably what caused a lot of the problem. There's brass and aluminum and water, and we had some electrolysis going on, and so there was a severe amount of corrosion in that float bowl. I poured some vinegar in there, just some plain white vinegar, and it actually helped to dissolve a lot of the corrosion and get rid of some of the white powdery aluminum oxide that you can still see a few traces of. But I got most of that out with the help of a little Dremel tool with a wire brush on the end, and that really helped with the cleaning of the inside of the carburetors. All of the jets cleaned up pretty well. Some of the idle jets were completely clogged. I think I only found one that actually was not plugged up, and I've got all of those clean now. All of the passageways in the carburetors are cleaned up, and the really good news that I'm happy about is the slides are okay and the diaphragms are okay. The worst needle of all was that one where all the corrosion went on, and there's a little bit of corrosion going on that needle right there. Shouldn't really make a big difference. We'll see, because that's down there where the throttle first cracks open off from idle. So I don't know, I may have to replace these at some point, which wouldn't be a bad idea. Putting new needles in wouldn't hurt a bit. Time to put this all back together and get it back on the bike. I have some severe pitting on the covers for the slide diaphragms. I sanded them down a little bit. There's some rust and stuff on here. I'm not going to worry about it too much because it doesn't penetrate through, but I am going to give everything a coat of paint just for because. I think I've got some black paint kicking around here that I'll chuck on there and take care of that little cosmetic problem. They're pretty buried, you won't see them anyway. So the diaphragms on these CV carburetors, when they have been sitting for a while and they get a little shrunk up, can be a real pain in the ass to put back in when you're trying to reassemble the carburetors. Gotta get the needle lined up here. There we go. So you try to drop them in there and they're a little bit smaller, and so you put the spring in and you put the cap on and you get it lined up right so that the little vacuum orifice can do its job, but you can't quite get it to seat all the way down no matter what you do, because these things want to wiggle around, not go in the slot. So here's a little trick. Take some contact cement, some of the yellowy kind of contact cement, and you can put just a tiny bit of it, just a little, around the very outside edge of the diaphragm. Don't put it around the area where the vacuum orifice is. Don't want a chance having it squish out and plug it up. It doesn't take much, just a tiny bit of this, and then we'll put it in there after this sits for a minute, and it'll help to hold it into the groove. So let's get some of that all the way around this. Alright, I've got a little bit all the way around. You can see it's not very much, just a fine little bead of it right there all the way around. And now I'm going to put just a little tiny bit of it in the groove on the carburetor with a flat blade screwdriver. Just smear just a trace of it. All you need is just a thin film, and put it like 90 degrees apart from each other, just so you have some place where there's a little bit of it that it can sit in and stick to. Tiny bit. Don't overdo it. Just a wee bit. That adhesive has had a chance to dry for a bit, so let's see how this is going to work out. Get that needle lined up. Alright, let's work that in all the way around. Give it a little squish. Look at that, it stays right in place. Isn't that just a beautiful thing? You can put the cover on there and makes that job so much easier. And I've already done the other three, so I'll just continue on putting these carburetors back together. Hope that tip helps you out if you run into that problem of shrunken up diaphragms. The carburetors are mounted back on the bike, and it's time to get some gasoline in these babies and see if maybe now it'll fire up, run, and idle. Whew, it's a cold day here in North Carolina. It's about 32 degrees out here right now. The wind's blowing, so the wind chill factor is probably 0. This may start a little hard. I've got some fuel in there. I don't see any leaks so far. Fire extinguisher nearby. Turn the key on, give it a little choke, see what we get. Good. She's trying. Back to life. Probably the first time it's ran in who knows how long. Well, that's a pretty good start. Probably just need to do that for a while and get the valves seated back in and everything, but I think we got a runner here. That's good news. It's come around a little bit more, so let's hear it again. Still got to dial in the idle a bit, but we're there. So I'm starting all over with that gas tank build. I didn't like what was going on with the white EPS foam because I was gluing pieces together and leaving it hollow inside. That was not working out well because the spray adhesive I was using has acetone. Acetone will dissolve any kind of polystyrene foam, including this stuff. This is extruded polystyrene foam. It's house insulation foam, 3/4 of an inch thick. You can get this at hardware stores. This was about 13 bucks for a 4x8 sheet. I've got it all laid out right now, 12 by 24 pieces, and I'm going to stack all those up, and by the time they're all put together it should make a block. Well, let's see, there's 3/4, another 3/4 is 1.5 inches, 2 more, that's 3 inches, so there's 3, 6, 9, 12. I'll have a 12-inch by 12-inch by 24-inch block. Basically I'll have 2 cubic feet of solid foam to work with. What I'm going to glue it together with is some hobby tacky glue stuff, basically white glue, like Elmer's glue. I'm going to smear it on here, let it dry just a little bit, and then stick it together, leave it overnight, and then get to work sculpting it. I think that should probably hold it together. One thing I did notice on the back side of this, there's a plastic film that needs to be peeled off. I'll show you that in a little while, but I'm going to get these pieces cut out now and get to work gluing all of these together. Here's that layer of plastic I was talking about. It's actually on both sides of the foam. So I reckon if I want it to bond together well, I need to peel that off. So that's pretty much all there is to that. On the other side, it's a little seam right here. I think peel it up. Yep. Same thing, just peel it off. We'll do that to all the pieces and then we'll start laminating them together. Tacky glue. You can get this at the hobby store, or you can just probably use Elmer's glue. But this stuff is supposed to dry a little quicker, I guess. Be a little tackier. Just going to try a little bit on here. And then use a big old putty knife spreader. You could just use a Bondo spreader too, I suppose. And I'm going to spread this out where it's just got a nice thin layer coating the whole piece, edge to edge. I think that's going to be the trick. So let's stick two of them together. Okay. We just keep going until they're all stuck together. There we go. I've got, let's see, just about 11 inches worked up, and these came out a little narrow because I cut the sheet in half in the parking lot without a tape measure, and I was off a little, but that's okay. 11 inches is plenty to work with height-wise. I'll save this for modeling up the seat later. This is a good start for the seat. So this has now got to sit overnight. So I need to cut that foam that I laminated earlier. I'm going to do that with a hot wire foam cutter. What's a hot wire foam cutter? Well, it's a piece of wire that you heat up, and then you can use it, drag it through the foam across a template and cut the foam to shape. I've got a little demo one rigged up here that I tested out. I've got a 12 volt power supply at 3.5 amps, which is plenty. It usually only takes about 1 amp maybe. And I've got a piece of stainless steel wire here I got at the hobby store from the jewelry section. Not sure what gauge this is. If I had to guess, it's about 20 gauge, something like that. So let me turn on the power supply here, and I'll get in a little closer for the shot and you can see what this will do. This is the section of wire that's going to get hot. When I turn on the switch, and right now you can see it's nothing, but in a minute it'll be warm enough and I'll be able to slice right through this foam. Just like that. Nice clean cut. So now, turn that back off. Now I need to make the templates for each side of the gas tank, stick them to the sides of that big hunk of blue foam, then rig this up on something that's kind of like this, you know, wide, that can hold it at tension, and then put a momentary contact switch on it so I can turn it off and on easily and get the tank cut out. So I'll go ahead and build up my foam cutter now. There's my hot wire foam cutter all built. I put the 2x2 across the top of that PVC to stiffen it up a little, and there's a thin wire just like we had on the bench running the full length. And I've got my stack of laminated foam jigged up here on this piece of wood. Now what I did was I put this section of wood right up against the edge, right? So now I know that this piece right here is 90 degrees to it, and as you can see right there, I'm just shaving off that little bit, and I'll cut all these pieces off right here. And the way that I'm sure it's 90 degrees on the cut is I've got another piece of wood stuck to the foam over here lined up with the edge of this piece of wood for reference. And I held the piece of wood on with just some 3-inch drywall screws. So I'll have to scoot this a little bit forward and then I can make the cut. Here we go, first try for the hot wire foam cutter. I've got a momentary contact switch right there that I can just push, and the wire will heat up, and when I let go it will cool back down. So here goes. Let's let it get hot for a second. Now just let the wire bump up against the pieces of wood, and that's my guide to stay nice and straight. So that's slicing right through there nicely. And it's going to cool the wire off a little as I go. So the trick is to just keep a little tension against the form, which is the vertical pieces of wood, and just let it go through at the pace that it wants to. Don't try to force it, because you'll just bend the wire and distort it and get a weird cut. Just have to allow it to go through at its own pace. This is working great. And once I get this block all squared up on all sides, then I can make my template for my tank and stick that to the sides, and I'll have a square block, so I'll have the reference point of where to mount it up, left and right, and then I can get the profile of my tank cut. We're just about through here. There we go. Let's see what we got. Wow. Beautiful. Nice clean cut. Now we'll just repeat the procedure all the way around and get this block all nice and squared up. Time to cut out the gas tank templates. There we go, that's one. One more to go. Now we screw the two templates together, lined up as best I can get them lined up. Now I'll run a sander around the edge just to make sure they're both fairly even, and then we can put them on the foam block and cut out the tank blank. And that's that. I chamfered the edges of the templates a little bit. This ensures that the wire will pass along here without catching on any splinters at all, and it's nice and smooth. So now we get those things mounted up on the blank and cut this sucker out. Okay, there's the template mounted up in the same position on both sides, just kind of measured from the bottom, indexed it in a few places, and it's exactly the same on both sides. So I think I'll do this in probably 3 cuts. I'll start here at the top and drop in this way, come off the end. Then I'll start here and drop in that way and come off the end, and then flip it over and do this final cut on the bottom. Here we go. Let's get that wire nice and toasty. Okay, that takes care of the front half. All right. Moment of truth. Hey, that's not bad. Well, I can just leave the templates on here and take my orbital sander and get rid of some of these imperfections. Use the template as a guide. I'll flip it over and do this last cut right here. Oh wait, I've got an assistant. Lisa rides a bike too. That's her motorcycle in the background. It's her Virago 250. Need to do some work on that. That'll be in another hack a week. I already did one, but it didn't quite work out. You got to get in there and make the idle jet a little bigger. All right. Thanks, Lisa. Cool. This is going to work out great. Now I'm going to sand this with the orbital sander to get rid of all the fuzzies. Then we'll take off the templates and see what we've got. Look at that. That's one tank blank. Now I just need to cut some shapes on here, kind of like a cafe tank, narrow at the back, widening out. Just keep it narrow enough underneath. This is cool. I'm going to get a lot of volume out of this thing. Let's stick it on the bike and see how it sits on there. Alright, this is going to work out great. I like the look. Well, this is alright. I really like this tank design. We're going to carve this up a little bit in the next episode and get it shaped really nice. Making some good progress on the bike. Got the carburetors all cleaned out, and it ran, as you heard. Doesn't sound too bad. It's just going to need to fire up and get itself seated back in, the rings and all that stuff. Parking a bike forever is like one of the worst things you can do. Bike, car, anything like that with an engine. If you're going to park it, at least turn it over once in a while. Keep it out of the rain. Keep the carburetors dry and clean. So next time we'll get after the tank. We'll get some more stuff mounted up here, start working on the instrument cluster. And until then, keep on hacking.